Eventually, Mr. Davis, realizing the boy's enthusiasm, took him to his school for 6 months. Quite a remarkable story is told of how this came about. One evening, Christmas asked John, the senior farmhand, if he could go to hear his pastor and master, the farm on which he worked belonged to Mr. Davis, preach the following Sabbath. John gladly gave permission, promising to look after the sheep and cattle for him. Throughout the service, Christmas sat with his head buried in his hands, and as soon as the service was over, he hastened home without a word to anyone. After a quick dinner, he was out among the sheep to relieve John. David Davis could not help noticing the young man's unusual behavior. After dinner, he sent for John and asked him about Christmas Evans. "He is a strange boy," he added. But John said, "You come with me." Together quietly they crept into the field, and there Christmas was busy preaching the morning sermon almost word for word to a congregation of cows, horses, and sheep. On the way home, Mr. Davis asked, "Do you know where I can get a boy to take the place of Christmas?" The boy was soon found, and that evening John told Christmas he would no longer be needed to look after his sheep. This news was received with sorrow. What had he done to deserve to be dismissed? But his master soon relieved his fears. "You are to come to my school. You shall be educated free of charge." Though there were many defects in David Davis's theology, there was a natural discernment and also kindness which made him single Christmas Evans out for what help he could be given. Here he learned Latin grammar, but it was not possible for his education to be continued for longer than 6 months. Chapter 4. The Young Preacher. Very early in his Christian life, Christmas Evans seemed to be concerned about preaching. The night after he suffered the loss of his eye, he had a remarkable dream. The day of judgment was come, and the world was in a blaze. Yet with confidence he cried, "Jesus, save me!" In his dream it seemed as if the Lord turned towards him and said, "It was thy intention to preach the gospel, but now it is too late, for the day of judgment is come." When he awoke, his dream clung to him. Throughout his life, Christmas Evans had many remarkable impressions through dreams, and believed that God spoke to him in this way. From the time of that dream, there was a deep concern that he should preach. There were, however, obstacles in the way. There was the rule connected with the church, where he was a member, that no one should be permitted to preach till he had passed through a college course. It is an interesting fact that the night Christmas Evans was received into church membership, another young man who was to become an eminent minister was received at the same time. This was David Davis, the same name as their pastor, afterwards of Swansea. Their first pastor always regretted in after years that because of the rule concerning preaching in their church, 2 of Wales's greatest preachers were lost to their denomination. It is also interesting to recall that both the young men preached their first sermons in the same cottage in the same week. Cottage preaching was of far more importance in bygone Wales than many today could realize, and the congregations which met in these old Welsh cottages were very discerning. It was at one of these cottage meetings that Christmas Evans first preached. The cottage belonged to a kind tailor who taught singing classes in the neighborhood and who helped the young men to learn to read. However, to say the least, his beginnings were not very auspicious. With a desire to do well, his first sermon was taken from Bishop Beveridge's Thesaurus Theologicus, most probably borrowed from his pastor. The sermon seemed to make some impression, till a farmer who was among the hearers went home and found the very book and sermon on his shelves. What a witness, incidentally, to the knowledge, even intellectualism, among the old Welsh rural society. Which of us have read Thesaurus Theologicus? In later years, this stealing sermons was a practice which became rather common in Wales, but against which Christmas Evans vehemently protested. Thus, the poor boy's reputation as a preacher seemed gone. "Still," said the good farmer, "I have some hope of the son of Samuel, the shoemaker, because the prayer was as good as the sermon." Perhaps he would have thought otherwise had he known that the prayer likewise was borrowed from a collection of prayers by Griffith Jones of Llandower. But the lad, Christmas, Samuel the shoemaker's son, was encouraged by one or two Baptists and independent ministers in the locality, and occasionally preached for them, especially for Mr. Perkins, the independent minister at Pencader, who showed him much kindness and sympathy, and often had him to preach in his pulpit. But at this time he was often in agony of soul concerning his own state before God, no doubt due to the uncertain sound of his own pastor's ministry. The tendency of what he had preached was to encourage self-righteousness, while he himself was bitterly conscious of his own guilt and corruption. Yet this was to be the man of whom, it would be said in later years, he helped to fill Wales with the radiance of the pure gospel.